Hello, hello. I don't know. Hello, can you hear? Good. Hello, hello. This one's working too. Yeah. People want to talk. Nobody really knows. Because nobody comes back to tell you.
only do I not exist? I can't go home. My Tesla card is in here. My car, I can't get in my car. That's why I panicked as much. I'm like, I can't get in my car. I'm like, he from his phone can do all of that. Not all of them. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Tiny bit. Good morning. Now you can see.
What's on name tag? I'm like, oh, this is the bottom of the cart. I don't use them anymore. Don't even think about it. Hello. Thank you for your help yesterday. I didn't do it.
Huh? No, you're on the end. No, 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 I don't want you to sit on the end, please. Can you see it?
Hello, Rabbi.
Hi, welcome back. We missed you. We had so many questions you could ask.
How is it? Can you taste the apple? It's olive oil and apple. Right. I don't, I try not to eat it. I love to bake.
No. I don't know the Angels, no. I don't know.
Is it about angels? It's called angels.
No, it's about the four Hebrew
When I bent down to get a cup of coffee or fix my jacket,
Yes.
I didn't hear about your parents. I thought it was your parents. I was shocked.
No, 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 no.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm thinking about a cochlear implant, seriously, because I'm losing my hearing.
You
And
just need the better hearing aid.
no, it's the same. It's the ears, yeah. Good morning. Oh, what a pretty print. Thank you. Oh, that's a bummer.
Susie, I cut them small.
I want a cup of coffee.
How are you? I felt very bad. When I backed up into your foot. I backed up into your foot.
Excuse me.
Yeah. You were very, I'm glad I don't remember it because you were very gracious.
Oh, I hope so.
And because about 7 years ago, I inadvertently touched someone or inadvertently, and it was really nasty about it. And it was here.
Really?
And guess what?
I
When people are
only,
nasty to you, you remember.
in the market, when somebody hits you with an iron thing, there's no excuse for that.
Guess what? I agree with you.
There's no excuse.
And I've had that happen a couple times.
Always,
Huh?
always.
But you were very gracious. Thank you.
Enjoy the cake.
Good morning, everyone. So before I get into today's material, I want to do just a couple of things. The first thing that I want to do is, last week I understand was Rosalie's birthday. So I need to do a birthday blessing for this year for her. Very nice. Okay. Next thing I want to do is Evie asked me a question on the way in, and I want to take 1 minute to answer it now because some of you may not know this as well. Some of you may know this, but just in case. So Evie asked me about Jewish priests. What's the difference between priests and rabbis? How did that all happen? And so remember that in our tradition, everyone is divided basically into 3 large groups. And it large groups that come from your father's lineage, not your mother's, your father's lineage. So either you are an Israelite, which is 99% of everybody, or you're a Levite, which means you come from the priestly group, or you're a Kohen, which means you come from a very small subsect of the Levites. So there were lots of Levites, and they managed the temple. They were the priests. And then some of the Levites were special Levites, because they descended from Aaron, and they were Kohanim. So you had Kohanim, Levites, and Israelites, everybody else. And you get that lineage, you get that pedigree from your father. And you get your Jewishness, as we know, from your mother. Now, that's only since Roman times. Before Roman times, biblically, you got your Jewishness from your father. Because all throughout the Bible, so-and-so, son of so-and-so, or daughter of, and it was the father. It only became the mother during and after the Roman conquests, because the Romans would go in and they would rape the women, and you didn't know who your father was. They would rape and then go off into battle. You always know who your mother is. And so that's why it changed. And now that is only a small convention now in modern times, because the rabbis evolved from a different tradition. The priesthood came from the Sadducees. We know very, very little about them, almost nothing. But they seem to have been the priests, and they seem to have been very rich, and they seem to have been disliked by the people. The Pharisees, on the other hand, out of their tradition come the rabbis. So the rabbis and the priests. And the rabbis weren't crazy about the priests, and the priests weren't crazy about the rabbis. How do we know this? From all of our writings. Absolutely. Because the Pharisees and the Sadducees were like this. Lots of competition. And so, out of the Sadducees comes this priestly tradition. Out of the Pharisees come the rabbis. So the rabbis and the priests. And so, what did the rabbis do? When the second temple was destroyed and there was no more priesthood, right? After the second temple is destroyed, There's nothing for the priests to do. We don't have a sacrificial cult anymore. The priests there's nothing for them to do. And so the rabbis threw them a bone, shall we say. So these days, when people are called to the Torah, in a traditional way, a Kohen gets the first aliyah, a Levite gets the second aliyah, and anybody else can have aliyahs after that. So it was a way of saying, you guys don't have a job anymore, but here, take this. We'll give this to you.
Well, they do, I mean, they bless the people.
They bless the people. If you duchen in a traditional synagogue, you have the Kohanim come up front and they bless the people. Yes, that's true. That is true. And Pidyon Habin. Okay, very good. So there's some minor things that the priesthood still does.
Why did the Kohanim take their shoes off when they approached the Torah?
I'm going to repeat it. Evie says, why do the Kohanim take their shoes off when they approach the Torah? When they duchen, when they come up in the front and they give the priestly benediction, they are made ritually pure. And so when we used to duchen in our synagogue, I had the priests stand at the door. They came out. The Levites were there the Levites were there at a washing station. The priests came over. The Levites washed them, and then the priests would ascend up, and they would take their talit, and we would duchen. It was a beautiful thing. I wish we still had enough Kohanim to do it, but we don't have any Kohanim. Okay.
We have one in Chabad.
Yeah.
One.
Yep. Okay. Last thing, and then I want to get started. We got a lot to go over today. I was thinking if we do the summer session. Okay, we are doing the summer session. Very good. So I have two ideas about what I thought you might be interested in. And so let me tell you what they are. And if you don't like them, you can propose to me something that you'd like to learn about. So my first thought is we're going to do for our last two classes the problem of good and evil in the world, which is just so enormous that it's going to take two classes for us to get through it. And the idea that bad things happen to good people, and bad things have happened to the Jews for centuries. And our tradition has always explained it that we transgressed, we sinned against God, and we got punished. That worked all the way up to the Holocaust. And after the Holocaust, Jewish thinkers said, no, we reject that. Most Jewish thinkers said, no, we reject that. And they came up with all kinds of ideas about how we're supposed to process evil in the world after the Holocaust. It's called Holocaust theology. If you would like to do that, we can talk about the major writings from Jewish thinkers since the Holocaust who have tried to explain the Holocaust and tried to explain what do we do with that now, with evil in the world now. My second thought is, the Israelites didn't believe in one God of the world. They believed in one God for the Israelites. It was a tribal God. Adonai was the God of the Israelites. And there were lots of other gods in the world, and every people had their own gods. At some point in history, that changed. And the Israelites believed in one God of all human beings. And it became monotheism as opposed to monolatry. So, if you want, we can take a look at how that process happened and when it happened. How did the tribal God of the Israelites become the God of all humanity? So I have those two ideas, and it could be something totally different. If all of you would like to study something or learn about something, you can tell me, and if you all agree on it, then I'll teach it. So I don't have to know today, but we can think about it. Yes, Lana?
Development of the Bible.
the development of the Bible. How the Bible got written. We could do that. So think about it, and you'll tell me. Okay, I want to do angels and demons today. It's a very big topic, but I'll try to give you the 50-minute version of angels and demons. Okay, so we have angels in the Bible, but they are called malachim. They are called messengers, and they're messengers from God, and they don't have names. So for instance, when Sarah learns that she's going to become pregnant, right, and have a child, and she laughs, right? That's why he's called. Why does she laugh? What is his name? Yitzchak, which comes from the verb to laugh. So, right? So Sarah learns from an angel. We don't know who that angel is. It's just an angel, a messenger from God. And when you sing Shalom Aleichem on Friday nights, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon. Okay, those are malachei, those are malachim, those are angels that you're welcoming. The first time we kind of get a name is in the book of Job. And in Job appears a demon whose name is Ha-Satan. Ha-Satan. And it means the Satan. He doesn't have a name, the Satan, the accuser. So, Ha-Satan in our tradition is like the prosecuting attorney. Right? When somebody does bad, Ha-Satan says, oh, look at him. Ha! I accuse you. So that's Ha-Satan. But we don't have any names of anybody. When we start to get names is in the Second Temple period. When is the Second Temple period? Up to 70 CE, correct. When does it start? 530 or something, very good. Approximately 538, very good. Yes, 530, good. So let's say it's 540 to make it a round number. 540 to the first century is 540 years, plus another 70 for the rabbis is 610 years, approximately, is the Second Temple period. And the Babylonian exiles return, and that's what starts the Second Temple period. Because you'll recall Cyrus the Great conquers the Babylonians. He's Persian. He conquers the Babylonians, and he allows the Jewish exiles to return to Judah. Some go, many stay. But the ones who went back rebuilt the temple. And so there was a second temple now. There was another temple. The sacrifices were starting again. The priesthood had a job again. What happened to them in the interim? Between the temples. So the exiles were in Babylon, and they were, as far as we know, they were the Jewish community in Babylonia. They had meetings, they did little prayer things. They had maybe the very, 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 very beginnings of what we might call synagogues. That's a Greek word, so that doesn't happen until much later. But they kind of got together maybe for some prayer services. They couldn't sacrifice because you could only do that at the Great Temple in Jerusalem. And there was no Great Temple in Jerusalem anymore. So they had meetings. They probably assembled all of their documents, and Ezra probably put together the Torah at that time and brought it back with him. What were the people in Judah doing? Who were there? The yes, the people in Judah were they're like the peasants, the normal folk, the average person. Everybody who was educated, knew anything, had already been sent to Babylonia. Who was left? The farmers, the shepherds, the average folk. And what did they do? They intermarried, exactly what Nebuchadnezzar had wanted. They intermarried with Canaanite women. And who is going to teach the children about religion? Probably the mom. And so, when Ezra came back with the Torah, he looked at the situation and said, what the heck is going on here? All of you Jewish men, you married Canaanite women. The children are growing up as Canaanites and and worshiping many gods. Get rid of your wife. What are you doing? Get rid of your wife. And from all accounts, the men basically went. And said, yeah, not going to happen. Not getting rid of my wife. No, thank you very much. Not going to happen. But there was a big move after Ezra got back to try to reinstall monotheism in the world, in the Jewish world again.
I have a question. The story of Ruth, is that during this period possibly?
The story of Ruth, is that during this period? Great question. The reason why it's a great question is because many people believe that Ruth was written as an argument to counter the idea that foreigners are no good, right? So Ezra comes back and he says, get rid of your foreign wives. We don't need all this foreign stuff. It's Jewish, Judah. And so Ruth comes in, and Ruth is the perfect example of somebody, a foreigner, coming into your country who is wonderful, right? She's fantastic. She's courageous. She's strong. She's fabulous. And she's beautiful, yes. And so Ruth was probably written as a counter to Ezra's argument, yes. The reason I'm kind of on that track right now because yesterday at AJU I taught the book of Judith. And we never got into the Apocrypha in this class, but Judith is an incredible story of like a super strong, courageous, fantastic woman in our tradition. And we just don't have a lot of those. I mean, you got Deborah, we have Yael, she's not Jewish, but we have Yael who kills Sisera, and we have Ruth. But Judith is like, woo, she's great. And so whenever we get these super strong, courageous, smart, wonderful women who take their lives and take things into their own hands and make things happen, I think we should celebrate it in a big way because we don't have enough of them in our tradition because the men wrote our tradition. Okay, so during the Second Temple, the exiles were exposed to Zoroastrianism, and Zoroastrianism has a very rich tradition of angels and demons. And so the exiles bring back that tradition of angels and demons from Babylonia. And so for the next 610 years, until the rabbis get a hold of the tradition, ideas about angels and demons are moving through Jewish tradition and getting embedded in the Jewish psyche. So by the time the rabbis get a hold of the tradition, angels and demons are already part of the tradition. They don't like it. The rabbis don't like it for reasons we'll talk about in a minute. But it's already way too embedded in the tradition. They can't get rid of it. So they have to work with it and change it. Are witches considered part of this? No. We have demons, but we don't have... The only witch I know about is the Witch of Endor. Right. And so the Witch of Endor is a medium. A medium. And she summons up Saul from... Remember we talked about that last week? She summons up Saul's essence from Sheol. And that's a very curious story for us because it's like, what's that about? Okay, so the question then becomes, how do we understand what God wants from us? How do we communicate with God? And so up until Malachi, we had prophecy. The prophets would tell us what God wanted from us and how God felt about us and what we need to do. Malachi ends prophecy. He's the last prophet. Somewhere kind of sort of in the Persian period, probably. Malachi ends prophecy. The rabbis become the interpreter of God's will many centuries later in 70 CE. But how do we know about God's will between Malachi, the end of prophecy, and the rabbis who take over? And some Jewish communities look to the angels. They were the ones who brought God's will to the people. They interceded to the people and told us what to do. And God would make his will known, and God would make things happen through the angels. Yes? Yes. So the question is, did the Persians believe the same thing as the Babylonians? Yes. Both of them believed in Zoroastrianism. They were the writings of the prophet Zoroaster, hence Zoroastrianism. And they both believed in that. And Zoroastrianism is still practiced today. It's not a dead religion. It absolutely is still practiced today. Okay, so Zoroastrianism, probably the main feature of Zoroastrianism, which we're going to start to get into next week, is trying to explain good and evil. And for Zoroastrianism, there was a good God up above, and then there was called a demiurge, a secondary god, who was bad and brought evil into the human world. And we can say, oh, well, that explains evil in the world. I mean, if there's a good God and the bad God brings evil to human beings, okay, we understand why evil is in the world and how it got here. Very simple. For us, our God creates good and evil. Our God creates good and he creates evil. And that's what's hard to reckon with. How can a good God do evil? We're going to talk about that starting next week. But for the Zoroastrianism, then the demons were part of the evil world, and they wreaked havoc in the world. Now, you can already see when the rabbis get a hold of this, they're like, oh, no. There are not two forces here. God is not opposed by another evil being. No, God does everything. These demons, no, we can't have that. And so they mess with the demons. Yes?
So in Christianity, where does the devil fit in as far as being in opposition to God?
Where does the devil fit in as being opposition to God? Well, in Christianity, they recognize fallen angels, right? Angels who were up with God and then fell out of God's favor or because they did evil and they oppose God. And this is similar in some ways to Zoroastrianism. But we don't have that idea, except in the Apocrypha. We have it for sure. And we haven't done a class on that yet, but in writings that didn't make it into the Bible, there were a whole group of angels who left heaven and came down to earth, and they had sex with women, and they had children. Those children wreaked havoc on the earth. They killed and everything. And that's why Noah had to go on the ark and God had to start over. But we don't get that story in our Bible. We get a teeny little snippet of it. But we don't get that story because the rabbis were very, very upset. They said, those angels can't do what they want. They can't tell God no. No.
All the angels were men? We didn't have lady angels?
We had a lady demon. Yes. Where were the lady angels? No, we didn't have them. No. Yes. Okay. Now, in the Second Temple period, we start to get names of angels. And we get the ministering angels, the archangels, the four most powerful angels in our tradition. And they are Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel. And they have specific jobs. Gabriel administers justice in the world. Michael administers mercy in the world. Raphael administers healing in the world. Uriel administers light and wisdom into the world. So, during this period, when the rabbis didn't exist yet, and prophecy had been finished, God sent his angels to do what he needed to do. And our tradition tells us, so when God needed to destroy Sodom, this is before Second Temple, but when God needed to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, whom did he send? He sent Gabriel to carry out the punishment, right? And when God needed other jobs done, he sent the ministering angels down to make sure that it happened. They were his messengers. So there's one of my absolute favorite teachings in our whole tradition. When we say at the end of Kaddish, Oseh Shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen, right? And you have never thought about this before, but it doesn't make sense. Oseh Shalom b'mromav, the one who makes peace in the heavens, then give peace to all of us and everything. The one who makes peace in the heavens, what? Why isn't there peace in the heavens? Where God lives, why isn't there peace? That makes no sense at all. How come God has to make peace up in heaven? What? Who's fighting? What's the problem? And the rabbis come in. I just think this is so wonderful. So, Gabriel is the angel of justice, and his essence is fire. Michael is the angel of mercy, and his essence is water. Fire and water cannot coexist, right? The water puts out the fire. So God has to make peace in the heavens so that Gabriel and Michael can coexist with him in the heavens. I just love that. Okay, so we have Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, and Uriel. They do not appear in our Bible. They don't. Absolutely not. They appear in the Midrash and they appear in the Talmud. But they do not appear in the Bible anywhere.
So they all get along?
They all get along. And God sends them to do missions. So, for instance, in the Apocrypha, in the text that didn't make it into the Bible that I just told you about, those angels who left God and went to earth and had sex with the women, God sends the ministering angels out to go imprison them. God says, go get them. And they chase them out into the nether regions of the universe, and they imprison them. So the archangels imprison those angels who had disobeyed God and went to earth. Okay, now, let's talk about the demons, because the demons are cool. Right? So we have a bunch of demons, but the three biggies, the three big ones. So we have the demon Asmodeus, who in Hebrew is called Hashmodai. In the Talmud, he's Hashmodai. And in a number of places, he is called the king of the demons. Then we had Hasatan in our tradition. In the Talmud, Hasatan gets a name. He gets a first name. And his name is Samael. And Samael is also referred to as the king of the demons. He's the super powerful demon. And then we have Lilith, who is the female demon. Okay, so let's start with Hashmodai. Yes? We don't have a female angel, but we have a female demon. Yeah. 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 The men wrote the story. End of story right there. The men wrote the story. And Lilith, we're going to find out, is not so, Okay, so Hashmodai is a very powerful demon in the Apocrypha. Again, the Apocrypha are books that were written that some Jewish communities were reading, especially the Essenes, but these books were not included in our Bible. So, in the book of Tobit, Tobit is an apocryphal book, and Tobit's son, Tobias, goes out, and Tobit wants to marry his son off to his cousin, Sarah, who lives far away. And what we find out in the story is that Asmodeus has been killing Sarah's husbands, fiancés, on their wedding night before they have a chance to consummate the marriage. Why? Because Asmodeus wants her for himself. Asmodeus wants Sarah for himself. And so what happens is every one of Sarah's fiancés, Asmodeus kills them on the night of their wedding before they can have sex. And what ends up happening is Raphael, the angel Raphael, God sends Raphael down, and he says, okay, you got to perform some stuff here. And Raphael ends up giving Tobias a magic formula. Tobias makes a thing, he burns it, and the smoke exiles Asmodeus out, and Tobias and Sarah can get married. Okay, that's an interesting story. But it's Asmodeus who does that. In our tradition, when the rabbis get a hold of Asmodeus, they're like, oh, no, we can't have some kind of demon who is like opposing God. Nobody gets to oppose God. God is all-powerful. Nobody gets to oppose him. So, in the Talmud, Hashmodai is rendered as kind of a foolish demon. He makes some dumb decisions, and he gets imprisoned, and he is seen as a foolish demon. He's not the all-powerful demon who kills people. The rabbis were not comfortable with that at all. In addition, the rabbis, shall we say, clipped the angels' wings, right? So the angels, who in the Apocrypha had the ability to tell God, no way, and they left and did what they wanted, the rabbis say, oh, no. Nobody gets to do that to God. God's all-powerful. And so in our tradition now, the angels get to do only what God tells them to do. They have no ability to make decisions on their own or to decide for themselves what they want to do. They have no free will in our tradition. In the Apocrypha, they definitely did. Because the angels go to one another and they say, if we do this, if we go down and we have sex with women and everything, God's going to be really mad at us. So, who's with me? Who's going down? Let's go. Who's with me? And they all said, I am. So they all go down and they all wreak havoc on the earth. God is furious, right? In our tradition, now, the rabbi said, no way. And so angels have no free will. They can only do what God tells them to do, and God sends them on missions, and that's it. Okay. Now, Hasatan, yes.
So, the level of importance of the apocryphal book.
The level of importance of the apocryphal books.
I know that the Maccabees are apocryphal books.
The Maccabees are apocryphal books.
And I don't know if it's Catholic or all Christians have the Apocrypha as part of
The Catholics have the Apocrypha as part of their Bible. The Protestants do not. It is called the Apocrypha, and it is outside the canon for Protestants.
So what is the level of importance of these books?
In our tradition. So what is the level of importance of these books in our tradition? Not so much. The rabbis said no, nope, 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 nope.
But they didn't get rid of them.
No, they didn't get rid of them. They couldn't get rid of them. There were some communities that were reading them. Like I said, there are a number of books that are still among the Dead Sea Scrolls. They found them among the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so they were important works during the Second Temple period, but they were rejected by the rabbis. But they give us really juicy bits of information into our tradition. Certainly the rabbis knew about them, and they knew what they said, but they didn't like them. So they're not important, which is why we don't hear about them very often. Except for Maccabees, and some Jewish communities read Judith on Hanukkah. How many books are there in the Apocrypha? You know what? I should know this, but I don't have the exact number. But there are a number. But there's a lot. There's a lot. Okay. So Hasatan, the accuser of Job, gets a first name in the Talmud. And his name is Samael. And Samael is also referred to as the king of the demons. And he's a very powerful demon. Samael has many, many, many traditions about him. But I think the most interesting tradition that I want to tell you about today is this. Who can tell me what original sin is? Sex. People were born with sin. Because why? Because sex? Because the apple. Adam and Eve, and are getting thrown out of the Garden of Eden and the apple. That's the original sin. Right. And because of that, all human beings have sin in them until they're baptized. That's what a baptism does. It gets rid of the original sin and then makes you right with Jesus, and you can go on and live your life. Okay. Do Jews believe in original sin? And the answer is normative Judaism, 90% of our tradition, no. We do not believe in original sin. However, I'm going to give you this juicy tidbit today. There is a minority strand within Judaism that does. So, it has nothing to do with Jews for Jesus. So let me read you the account from the Midrash. Yes?
We do believe that everybody has, I forget, they have the inclination.
They have Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer HaTov. Yes, the inclination to do good and the inclination to do evil. And it is our job to learn how to control the inclination to do evil and to always try to go towards the inclination to do right. Ken?
Everybody talks about it as the apple, but the Bible actually says the fruit of the tree.
The fruit of the tree. Everyone says it's an apple, but who knows? Pomegranate, who knows? It was something. It was the fruit. So now listen to this, because this is kind of juicy. He, Samael, came to her, Eve, and she rode the serpent and conceived Cain. Afterwards, Adam came to her, and she conceived Abel. As it is said, and Adam knew Eve, his wife. What is meant by he knew? He knew that she had conceived. And she saw his likeness, that it was not of the lower beings, but of the heavenly beings. And she saw and said, I have acquired a man by the Lord. Okay, if you didn't understand that, what happened was Samael rode the serpent, seduced Eve, and had sex with her. Samael the demon. And from that union comes Cain. And then Adam had sex with her after Samael, and from Adam came Abel, the good one. So this midrash is meant to explain, how could Eve have two sons who were so different? Cain was so evil and Abel was so good. How did that happen? And the midrash says, well, it was the demon Samael that impregnated Eve and gave birth, so that she gave birth to Cain. Okay, if we look at that, he seduces her, he has sex with her, he impregnates her, she has Cain, then she has Abel, Cain kills Abel, so then everybody else on the earth comes from Cain and comes from her, who has been made impure by demon sperm, shall we say. Ooh, that's original sin, baby. Everybody after that is contaminated with Samael's wickedness. How did Jews get out of that? How did Jews, if Christians get baptized, how did Jews get out of that sin? When we all said Na'aseh v'nishma at the bottom of Mount Sinai, we were cleansed of that sin, the original sin. Now, the question that you will ask me is, wait, Rabbi. Wait. She had Cain, he was bad. But then she had another son. She had Seth. Seth was good. So there was another tradition in the Midrash that says all the bad folks came from Cain, all the good folks came from Seth, right? In any event, when we say, do Jews believe in original sin, the answer is basically no. But there is this incredibly juicy minority Midrash that says absolutely everyone was contaminated with Samael's evil because he had sex, he seduced, he impregnated Eve. And out of her came demon children, right? I mean, or children who had some of the demonic in them. Yes? Which group in Judaism believes in original sin? Nobody believes in original sin, except there is this juicy midrash as a very, very minority point of view. Remember that all religions, and Judaism is absolutely right up there with everybody else, the biggest question for us all is, how does evil get into the world and how come it's still here if God is good? And this is an attempt to explain, well, the way evil got into the world is Samael impregnated Eve.
How did Cain reproduce? There's no women in the story.
So this is a big question. How did Cain reproduce? There's no women. Well, there's all kinds of ideas about There were sisters and there were other people. It's a very valid question, and it's very difficult to answer. Okay, now I want to 1047. Jeez. Okay, now I want to go to Lilith, because Lilith is kind of juicy too. So Lilith is a female demon, and she probably comes out of the Sumerian tradition. And the Sumerians had a woman demon called Lili-Tu. And this Lili-Tu was embraced as a demon by a number of different other ancient cultures. So it would be no surprise that we would co-opt Lilith for us as well. And Lilith, so she's a demon. And she is given to Adam as his first wife. And she's not happy. She's not happy because basically she has said, we are both created equally. And in the traditional reading, the woman is created from the man, so she is less than the man. But that's a bad reading, in my opinion, because the Hebrew word selah, from which she's taken from his rib, it can mean rib, but more often than not, it means side. So she's taken from his side, meaning she's exactly his other half. I like that reading much better. But that wasn't the traditional reading. It's certainly not the Christian reading. Okay, so Lilith is not happy that she has to be subservient to Adam. Go ahead. She was given to him by God. She was created to him, for him by God. And basically, our tradition says that when they had sex for the first time, she wanted to be on top. And Adam basically said, no, not going to happen. She wanted to be equal to him. Not going to happen. And she said, I am so out of here. I am equal to you. I'm out. And she runs away. Now, she is known for her ability to kill children. She she strangles children while they're sleeping, and she seduces men. And when she seduces men, she uses their sperm to create many, many, many little demons. So she gives birth to many, many, many little demons. And so in our tradition, the angels, Senoi, Sansenoi, and Semangelof, according to the alphabet of Ben Sira, which is a 10th century apocryphal text, they are sent to go retrieve her and bring her back to Adam. And she says, no way, Jose, not going back. And so the three angels who are sent to retrieve her say, well, it's going to get messy then. We'll leave you alone if you promise us one thing. And the promise is you don't mess with the offspring of Adam and Eve, meaning you're not going to kill little babies. And she says, okay, I get my freedom. I'm not going to mess with little babies. Okay, fine, I agree. So they don't bring her back, but they extract this promise out of her to not hurt people. And as Joette pointed out, many superstitious families would wear an amulet, and they would put an amulet around the baby with the names of Senoi, Samsonoi, and Semangalof to ward off Lilith from taking the baby. And as Joette also said, sometimes the red band that people wear, the red string, sometimes can be seen to ward Lilith off. Now, Lilith, in Kabbalistic terms, becomes the wife of Samael. Samael and Lilith are together, and they reign as king and queen over the Sitra Achra. And you will say, the Sitra Achra, what is that? In Kabbalah, the Sitra Achra is almost exactly like what you know from Star Wars as the dark side of the Force. And Sitra Achra means the other side. Now, Kabbalah and Gnosticism and Zoroastrianism all posit another kind of idea, a good God and a not so good God. In Kabbalah, they can't say, well, there's a God and a bad God, but they say there is God only, but there is God whose good intentions exist here in the heavens, and then there is another place where God is absent, and it's called the Sitra Achra. And when the Sitra Achra becomes very, very powerful, the Sitra Achra can kidnap the Shekhinah. So, when we get to good and evil and ideas about explaining good and evil, I'm not necessarily a Kabbalist all the way, but this is the only explanation that works for me. That sometimes in the world, God's power becomes weak because of what we do in the world. And the Sitra Achra, the dark side of the Force, becomes very powerful. And remember, Luke Skywalker, he says, and Yoda says, be careful, the dark side of the Force will seduce you. And Luke says, is it more powerful than the light side, than God? No, but it will seduce you. And the idea is that when we abandon everything that God teaches us, then the Sitra Achra gains in power. Anyway, Samael and Lilith are the king and queen of the Sitra Achra. They reign in the place where God doesn't. Do they have kids? No. Okay. So this is basically in our tradition. We have 4 big angels. And God sends them, when God needs something done, God sends certain angels to get stuff done. And for the period of time during the Second Temple period, some Jewish communities saw the angels as the way that God would communicate with us now, because the prophecy had stopped. The prophets were telling us what God wanted from us. When we didn't have prophets anymore, how do we find out? How do we find out? We lost communication with God. We lost contact with God. So the angels brought us God's will until the rabbis come in and appoint themselves the arbiter of God's will. And then we know from the rabbis what God wants.
Gabriel is justice.
Gabriel is justice. Mercy is Michael. Raphael is healing. Healing.
And Uriel?
Uriel is light and wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
Light and wisdom. I happen to have a great-grandson named Gabriel, who's 7 years old.
Every time you talk, and he has an uncle, Machoil. I was thinking about these two.
Yes. Yep. Named after the angels. Yes. So we have the 4 ministering angels, or they, in sort of common terms, the archangels. They are the 4 most powerful angels, and there are lots of angels underneath them, but these 4 are the big 4. And when God needs something done, he calls on one of them. So you recall in our, for instance, in our various midrash, when God says, let us make man in our likeness, Whom is God speaking to? Let us make man. Well, in one of the midrash, he's talking to the ministering angels. He's talking to Gabriel. He's talking to his 4 big ministers, right? He says, okay, guys, what do you think? I want to make man. What do you think about that? And they're like, I don't think that's such a good idea. I don't think that's such a good idea. And the Midrash says, while they were discussing it and telling God that they didn't think it was a good idea, God already did it. Are the angels more important than man? No. Well, they have everlasting life. Some do. Some angels, according to our tradition, only live for a day. They have a mission, they live for a day, and they're gone. But they're not more important than humans. They are. So we have God on the hierarchy. God. Then we have the angels in terms of immortality, and then we have human beings. Angels can only do what God said. And they're jealous that human beings have free will. We get to do what we want. And that's why the angel said, no, you don't want to create man. No, bad move. Bad move.
When I hear the word make, it's not the same as create.
Correct.
And therefore, to me, man already existed. Now we're going to change him into more like God.
So Lana's talking about the difference between the Hebrew verbs yotzer, which means to form from something that has already been, or borei, which means to create ex nihilo, from something from nothing, or in Hebrew, yesh me ayin, something, yesh me, from ayin, nothing. And so there are 2 verbs that God uses to create. When he creates man, he creates him, in one story anyway, he creates him from the earth. So he yotzer, right? He forms him from the earth. But in the beginning, God creates out of nothing.
So he could be talking to man himself.
So he could be talking to man himself.
Let's make man in our image.
Okay. Let's make man. It's a very problematic passage, and all the rabbis have different ways to solve it. But one of the most famous ways is that he's talking to his heavenly council.
Or he could be talking to the animals.
Or he could be talking to the animals, which is made up of the ministering angels asking them for their opinion.
I just want you to clarify.
Yes.
I think from a few minutes ago.
Uh-huh.
My mother, when all of the grandchildren,
My mother, when all of the grandchildren,
she used to call the string a red bendel. She said you have to put a bendel on the baby, and if you put the crib up before the baby comes, you have to put a bendel on the, is that the same?
yes, yes, to protect him from Lilith.
And what did that bendel, did it protect anything in your file?
Because then Lilith would look at the red string and know that the angels, she had made a promise to the angels, the 3 angels, that she would not hurt the children anymore.
So that's what a red bendel.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying not to laugh because my mother was a baby when she came to this country, and although she spoke Yiddish, she was very modern. And my father, born in Philadelphia, his half-sister, was so superstitious and so frightened of my mother.
A family member, so Evie's talking about a family member who was very, very superstitious. When you would come, they would put red ribbons about the adults even. Yeah. So much of our tradition is based on superstition. Yes, it is. It is. It's based on superstition. Okay, everyone. Yes. Or Uvrei Hoshech, right? Uvrei et Hashal, yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Okay, I have to, guys, it's 11 o'clock. You need to take a break or you won't be able to, huh? So think about what you want to do over the summer, and I'll be happy to whatever you'd like to learn, I'll be happy to teach it.
How many classes do you teach besides this one?
teach one class at the AJU, and then I have a number of private vocal students during the week.
So, Debbie Friedman's song about the four angels, it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Me, Umi Smoli Gabriel, Umi Lifana, Uriel, Umi Lifana, Raphael, Umi Acharai, Uriel, Ve'al-Roshi,
Good, and this has
Shekhinah.
then this has to do with,
Right.
In our tradition, the angels are
Right.
placed at
One in
various
front,
positions
right.
around God. Yes.
Yeah, the Al-Roshi Shekhinah. I mean, it's such a beautiful song.
So, I did fall asleep, so you may answer this question. So they came back from Babylon. The religion is now corrupted with these angels stuff. So did the rabbis de-emphasize it because they understood this was a corruption from the...
They de-emphasized it because they didn't want any other beings competing with God.
Right.
God was ultimately, and
Yeah.
if there were other beings, they were lesser beings, and they couldn't challenge God. In the Apocrypha, they absolutely could challenge God, and they could say no, and they could do whatever they wanted.
Yeah, I got that. I was just wondering whether they had a knowledge
Class, Rabbi.
of the
One even better
development of
class.
the religion that they wanted it to be corrupted. But you can't change what the people think.
Exactly. It had already been part of the tradition for 600 years.
Class, Rabbi.
So we'll talk to you about the summer class and then also next year and what you want to teach. So we'll leave it up to you to decide. You can continue theology, you can do anything you want. Just let us know.
Great.
Yeah, great. So.
I use it. Yours was very funny.
I was very, but you have to remember, I get up 3 or 4 in the morning, and in the evening, my mind just,
You've got a little bit of you got a little spice to you. I like it.
I had a good marriage.
Hi, thoughts. The Jews. Ernie, how you feeling?
She couldn't be in a place where there were flashing lights and, things like that. And she had, when I used to go to engagement. Yeah, so I always used to stand by her that she was there. And, she had only certain
That's a subtle ring. That's a very subtle ring.
Mine's hallelujah.
Mine's ring. All right, friends. Roaming. Countrymen.
You want to borrow our ears?
Lend me your ears. There's a different one. I made a different one for this week. Only people who are sitting down are going to get the text.
You must have your family in stitches all the time.
Yeah, stitches. No one listens to me in my house. The only reason
The only reason you became a rabbi is that
someone will listen to me. No one listens to me at all, that's for sure.
Does anybody know what conclave means?
Yeah, what does it mean? It's all right. No time to complain.
I do too.
Sharing.
One cup of peanut butter, one cup of sugar, one whey. Is it three?
mine are way more complicated.
No, it's the best
fantastic.
cookies.
It's
They're
the
the
best.
best cookies.
I make all kinds of.
But that's, wait, I'm sorry, let me turn around. Wait a minute.
The recipes that have flour in them diminish the peanut taste. I'm sorry, sweetie. Yeah, no, this is the perfect recipe.
Yeah,
I usually
Well, I use artificial sweetener and I use almond flour. I can't use
well, you don't need almond flour.
Right, you don't need flour in your I just made this 2 days ago.
Yeah, they're my favorite cookies.
Okay, I'm gonna make them next time.
I can't resist. They're worth the calories.
Okay. Which one's better? This one's better, right? I'll take both of them. How's that? It's too much. Okay. So this morning, first of all, Boker Tov, good morning. I hope everyone's well. What I want to do today is, this may be too ambitious of a story to get through all of it. So someone said, are we continuing what we were doing last week? And here's the truth. I couldn't remember what we did last week, so this morning I just made it something else. That's God's honest truth. I was like, I think I said that I was going to bring this again next week, but I don't remember what this is, so I'll just do something else. Does anyone remember what we did last week? Oh, Bridget's so good. Oh, well, here, you can keep this. Do you want to keep it? Okay, so this is what I thought that we do today. This morning, when I sat down to think about what to talk with you about, I was thinking about the conclave, there's like this, a big minyan that's gathering with, they all have like red kippas, very frum, right. Anyway,
I thought it would be interesting. The cardinals are gathering, and they're gathering to decide a new pope. So I thought that we could talk about like what happens when the rabbis get together. You know, our own conclave. Dun dun dun. By the way, I don't know if you saw the movie. The book is better. Robert Harris, I think, is the author's name. He wrote this book called Conclave. So I read the book recently, and it's great. And then the movie, they stick to each other pretty closely. But anyway, I recommend those. So I was thinking about the conclave. I was thinking about what happens when rabbis get together. So the rabbis, who are, like, what's a rabbinical conclave? That's a bad. Sanhedrin, the Jewish Sanhedrin. So this was the court. We've talked about this, I think, in this session before. The court, they used to gather there was the great Sanhedrin, which used to sit in Jerusalem during the time of the Second Temple in the chamber of hewn stone. None of the other chambers had hewn stone on it because they were finished and you weren't, but where the Sanhedrin sit, they were allowed to. And they would adjudicate law, and it was a group of 70. Then after the destruction of the Second Temple, the Sanhedrin went in, it went out, and then eventually it moves to, it actually moved before the destruction, like a little bit before, to Yavna. And so it could survive the Romans, and then it also endured further persecution after the Bar Kokhba revolt against the Romans. And so there was the Sanhedrin, if you think about it, was a combination of both rabbinical authority, but it was also political authority. So in those days, the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, what Nasi, does anyone know what that means in Hebrew? President. The Nasi, or the president of the Sanhedrin, was designated as the chief, was like sort of the politician of the group. So not to say that this person wasn't an established scholar, but they could be other people who were had more scholarly accomplishments, and this was a political function. And then there were the scholarly function, the scholarly function of the rabbi, and the Sanhedrin was sort of a meeting of these two apparatuses, right, where the political and the scholarly kind of converged. And so there were a lot of, I'm not giving you any spoilers, but just what's going on right now in Rome and what went on in the movie. There's a lot of politicking and this and that and manipulate. There's a lot of things going on, discussions being had. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit of what happened in the Sanhedrin, of some of the moves for greater authority and how that all happened. Okay? Any questions? So this is an obscure, not an obscure, but a shorter sugya of Talmud. It's called Horayot. It's a short one. Anyway, I'm going to teach. I'm going to read this through, and then we're going to try and piece it together. So I'm going to go quickly just to kind of make sure that we get through it once, and then we'll go more slowly together. Okay? The sages taught in a Braita. When the Nasi, the president of the Sanhedrin, enters, all people stand, and they do not sit until he says to them, sit. When the Av Beit Din of the Sanhedrin, it's the second in charge, enters, the people form for him one row from here on this side of the path that he takes, and one row from there on the other side of it in a display of deference until he sits in his place. Then they may be seated. When the Chacham enters, one person stands when he is within 4 cubits of the Chacham, and another sits, i.e., when no one is no longer within 4 cubits of the Chacham, he may sit. And all those whom the Chacham passes do this until he sits in his place. Let's pause there. What is going on here?
Well, they have different customs for their positions.
They've
They're recognizing there's different ways to honor him.
there's different ways of honoring different positions. Which position is the most honored? The first one, the Nasi. Could someone offer how the Nasi is honored? Here, let's pretend, here, this is good exercise. Let's pretend the Nasi just walked in. What do we do? Everyone stand? And when can we sit down? When the Nasi comes and sit down and says, you all may be seated. Then we sit down. Okay. What's that? It does? Okay, Simon says stand. Simon says sit. Stand, sit. I don't remember. Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah. But that's more because otherwise people are blocking other people's view. I don't know if that has to do with respect. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with respect. Okay, that's the Nasi. When the Av Beit Din, we don't have to stand and sit. If the Av Beit Din walked in, what would happen? If there were two...
Looks like last night.
When the Av Beit Din walks in, what happens?
They stand up and make two rows.
Right, this row stands, then when he comes in, then this row, it's kind of like the bride, have you ever seen like a wedding when the bride, okay. All right, now. Right, on Yom Kippur with the Hineni, right, good. Okay, and then, finally, when the Chacham enters, let's say the Chacham enters over there, who has to stand? Only the people who are in close proximity to the Chacham have to stand. So folks on this side of the room, no. So it's four cubits. So a cubit is from the top of your middle finger to your elbow, about. So it's a few feet, maybe like 2 feet, maybe, right? About a little less than 2 feet. So, 20, about 20 inches maybe. So only people in the closest proximity would have to stand. So you could see that for the Nasi, the highest position, there's the greatest honor. Then the Av Beit Din, a little less. And then finally the Nasi, some but not much. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan, does everyone see where I am? Okay. Rabbi Yochanan says the Mishnah, i.e. the preceding text that we talked, the Breita. A Breita is, anyway, was taught during the days of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel taught this text. Now he himself, as the text says, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was the Nasi. Rabbi Meir, or Rabbi Meir, was the Chacham, and Rabbi Natan was the Av Beit Din. When Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was there, everyone would arise before him. When Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan would enter, everyone would arise before them. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said, shouldn't there be a conspicuous distinction between me and them? So what's happening there first? He wants the kavod. First, the first way it used to be is that whatever office you had, everyone got up. And then Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who's in charge, he's the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, says, I'm not so loving this. So he makes a new ceremony that allows the more honorific one going to the Nasi, what we just read. He's the teacher of that. It gets better. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel instituted this Breita, meaning all that this ceremony that we taught initially. I just lost it. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel instituted the provisions delineated this Breita, meaning the layered version that distinguished between the Nasi and his subordinates with regard to the deference shown to them. That day, when Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel instituted these provisions, when he taught this, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan were not there. They were out, and he made a grab. The following day, when they came to the Beit Midrash, they saw that the people did not stand before them as the matter was typically done. They said, "What's going on?" The people said to them, "This is what Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel instituted." Rabbi Meir said to Rabbi Natan, "I am the Chacham and you are the Av Beit Din. Let us devise a matter and do to him as he did to us." In other words, he got us. So number one, we were out, we had a cold or whatever. We were out on a personal day. We were, mental health day, all the days that we have. Anyway, they say, why don't we do the same thing to him? And then Rabbi Meir said to Rabbi, hold on.
What shall we do to him?
Oh, right. So the other guy says, let us devise a matter, do it as he did to him. What shall we do to him? That's what the other guy says. So the other one has no problem with this. Like Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan quickly fall into cahoots with one another. Then Rabbi Meir says, reveal Okatzim, which he does not know. And once it is clear that he did not learn, he will not have anything to say. Then we will say to him, who can express the mighty acts of the Lord shall make all his praises heard. Indicating for whom it is becoming to express the mighty acts of the Lord is becoming for one who is capable of making all his praises heard and not for one who does not know all of the tractates. We will remove him from his position as Nasi, and I will be Av Beit Din, and you will be the Nasi. So Rabbi Meir has got a plan. What's his plan? The plan is to take over. How are you going to take over? What are they going to make him look like? They're going to embarrass him. They're going to make him look like a fool. So Okatzim is a very obscure, small tractate of Talmud that no one studies, that has to deal with like the impurities of tree trunks. Did we ever study? I can't remember what I studied with you and what I studied with my other Talmud class. There's like spiritual impurities. Anyway, it's esoteric. It's not like real. It's not real applicable. And so it wasn't exactly high on the list of like texts to study, right? And you can understand why even a Nasi like Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who's like, running the government, may not, like, if he didn't study, Mesechet Psachim or, Baba Metzia or, Mesechet Shabbat, then you're like, all right, buddy. But Okatzim, really? Like, it's kind of like, it's an intentional trip up. And then they're going to use a proof text from the Psalm saying, wait a second, certainly our leaders should know all of God's praises, meaning they should know all of the material comprehensively. They're going to make him look like an idiot, and they're going to remove him. Now tell me where you've heard this before. Rabbi Yaakov ben Korshi heard them talking and said, perhaps heaven forfend that this matter will come to a situation of humiliation for Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. So he went, sat behind the upper story where Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel lived. He explained Tractate Okatzin. He studied it aloud and repeated it. He studied it aloud and repeated it. What just happened there? Right. So Rabbi Yaakov ben Korshi, is doing a little like Mordechai thing. You remember Mordechai, who like overhears the plannings of the right? So he overhears Natan and Rebbe Meir making this plan to depose Shimon ben Gamliel. So he goes to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and he pulls an all-nighter teaching him the tractate that's supposed to trip him up. And so he does it. He studies. He repeats it. He needs to study the Mishnah, so he does it. He learns the whole thing. It's not. It's learnable, but like he went to thought. He probably would have rather watched the Dodger game, but instead he, okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, "What is this that is happening? Perhaps heaven forfend that there is something transpiring in the study hall." He concentrated and studied tractate Okatzin. Like he doesn't really know why he's doing this. His buddy comes up to him and is like, "You got to learn this material for tomorrow." And he's thinking, this does not seem like urgent. Something's going on, right? He senses something's going on because the impurities of trees are not really the primary concern of the Nasi. Hold on. The following day, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan said to him, let the master come and teach a lesson in Okatzin. He began and stated the lesson he had prepared. After he completed teaching the tractate, he said to them, "If I had not studied, you would have humiliated me." Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel commanded those present, and they expelled Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan from the study hall as punishment. Okay, so he expels them. What does usually expel mean? Throw them out and goodbye. It's a one-way. It's not a lehitraot, which means I'll see you soon. It's a shalom, right? It's a seitchem l'shalom, which means, go away. But that's not what happens. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan would write difficulties on a scrap of paper and would throw them into the study hall. So they sit outside the window and they start tossing in halachic questions of Jewish law into the study hall. Those difficulties that were resolved, and those that were not resolved, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan would write resolutions and throw them into the study hall. So they'd pose questions. And then they'd have a discussion in the study hall, and if they didn't know the answer, they'd say, "We don't know," and then they'd toss back another thing with the answer on it. So there's a discourse that's actually happening between, they're expelled, but they're kind of not really expelled because they're sitting right out there. They're hearing the discussion, and they're communicating with the discussion. They're out, but they're not fully out. Rabbi Yossi said to the sages, how is it that the Torah is outside and we are inside? Like, how is it that the Torah, meaning the knowledge, is out there and we're in here? Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said to them, let us admit them into the study hall. In other words, okay, you have a point, but we will penalize them in that we will not cite halacha in their names. They cited statements of Rabbi Meir in the name of Achirim, others, and they cited statements of the Rabbi Natan in the name of Yesh Omrim, some say. So what's the penalty for what happens to these two guys? Right, so they're allowed to come into the class, but they're not attributed credit for the teachings that they offer. So we benefit from their Torah. Their Torah is brought back into the Beit Midrash, but they're not. How many of you think, like, any thoughts? You know what? Let me take you to the next level, and then we'll hear your thoughts. And then we'll go through it step by step. Years later, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, that is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel's son, is Yehuda HaNasi. He's the guy who edits the Mishnah. Before the Mishnah, the reason that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel needed to learn this thing and pull in all-nighters, you had to memorize it. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi puts it all together and codifies it in written form. So now Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is teaching his second child, Rabbi Shimon, who's named after Shimon ben Gamliel, the guy who was the Nasi. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who is the son of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, is teaching, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is teaching his son, Rabbi Shimon, that Achairim said it was considered a substitute, don't worry about this, it would not be sacrificed. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's son, Shimon, said to him, who are these sages whose water we drink, but in whose names we do not mention? In other words, they're sitting there. So you have he's the Nasi. His son is who?
Rabbi Yossi.
So guess what? He's also the Nasi. Right? And he is the guy who writes the Mishnah. He codifies the Mishnah. He's got a little boy chick whose name is Shimon. From him, they establish the special hierarchical entrance, and then he lets back in his detractors, who were Rabbi Meir and Natan. And he lets them back in under what caveat? They don't get credit for their teachings. He, his son, is then teaching his son. And he teaches his son something, I didn't look it up even, something great. And what does his son say to him?
Who wrote this?
Yeah, like, whose water are we drinking, but whose names we do not mention? Third line on the second page. Oh, on the third page. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said to him, they are people who sought to abolish your honor and the honor of your father's house. He's saying, the reason we don't mention these guys is because they try to destroy the family name. His son said to him, pasuk, a verse, their love as well as their hatred and their envy is long ago perished. So what's Rabbi Shimon trying to do? Yeah, and he's saying, no, we should, let's teach them by their names. This is old. This is old stuff. I don't know if I should say this, but I'll say it anyway. My grandmother of blessed memory, Grandma Esther. My grandma lived in the Warbassy apartments right by Coney Island. And I'd go and visit her in her old age. When I was in graduate school, I used to take the F train all the way down to Coney Island. I used to go out with her and take her out. And one day, we're in the yard of the Warbassy apartments, which is like a very big apartment, controlled rent apartment complex. And she sees someone, but she gets it turns out, I'm like, oh, who is that? And she goes, those are the cousins. The cousins? Right. Those are the cousins. I'm like, I've been going to that apartment building my whole life to visit her. At that point, when I was visiting, I was probably 25, 26 years old. I'm like, the cousins? I've never met these people before. What do you mean, the cousins? She goes, those are the cousins we don't speak with. I said, okay. And I said, Grandma, why don't we speak with these cousins? And she goes, I don't know. I forgot. And then she laughed. But it's like, so grandma, she's not the only one. Rabbi Shimon's like, come on. Let's invite let's Rabbi Natan and Rabbi Meir be acknowledged and heard. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said to him, he is a pasuk. The enemy are come to an end. The wasted places are forever. So Rabbi Shimon uses a verse to say, let bygones be bygones. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi comes back to his son and says, no, I also have a verse from the Tanakh that says, damage is done, forgive but do not forget. Okay, Rabbi Shimon then said to his father, don't worry about the rest. Then it concludes with Rava said, even Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, his humble, taught the sages said in the name of Rabbi Meir, but he did not say directly, Rabbi Meir said. So it's a related teaching that the rest of his life, Yehuda Nasi never always held on to it. So even with Rabbi Meir, he'd say, there are those who say b'shem Rabbi Meir instead of saying Rabbi Meir Amar. Rabbi Meir said. He won't give him direct attribution. He will only kind of indirectly quote him. Okay, and that is how the text concludes. Well, it continues, obviously, but that's how this piece...
It wasn't nice of Rabbi Gamliel to have that little conference changing the order of people.
Okay, so one comment is, Shimon ben Gamliel is out of line. That guy, why did he do a power? Why did he change the whole ceremony when his two colleagues, junior colleagues, but his colleagues were out on a sick day? Not very nice. Okay? Anyone else? Thoughts about that? Thoughts about anything about this text?
I can't believe Shakespeare didn't write a play about it.
That's right. This is what's going on in Conclave right now. That Shakespeare should have written a play about this. Joette?
Can I just take the microphone?
Yeah, I would use this one, though, because my germs.
So many of you know my husband was a chaplain in the Air Force. And when he got promoted to full colonel, it's a big deal in the Air Force. So anyway, he was in charge of a certain meeting. I don't remember what it was. And the first time that he went in after his promotion, everybody stood up and saluted, which is the proper thing to do. His response was supposed to be to salute back and say, as you were. But he was a little flustered. So when they all stood up and saluted, he said, sit, 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 sit.
Well, it seems like Shimon ben Gamliel didn't have any problem with that. He had the whole, he had the whole thing designed in his head, right, that he kind of liked the, Shimon ben Gamliel liked the honor. By the way, the Israeli army is very informal. And so it's like they're calling their commanding officers by their first names and so sometimes when there's interactions between the American military and the Israeli military, I saw this once. One of the American, why was I on a base or something for some reason? And the American soldier looked at me and was like, "What's going on with these guys? Like, why?" And I'm like, "It's just the way they do things here. It's a little different." But the Americans are used to a very strict protocol. Except for Marv, and because he's Jewish, whatever. But anyway, Shimon ben Gamliel seemed to like this protocol. Other thoughts about this text? Go ahead, Adrian. Yeah, come.
So when Mike, my husband, came to the White House to work, he was a captain in the Army, and he met his superior officer, which is another veterinarian. And so you're supposed to salute. But he thinks, oh, he's meeting another veterinarian. He doesn't salute. And he got in big trouble. They got a phone call. The other veterinarian said to the higher-ups, I don't know if this guy's going to make it. We might have to send him to Vietnam. That's what happens when you don't follow protocol.
Wow.
Luckily, he didn't go.
Wow. Yeah. That's okay. So, if any of you become a veterinarian, always salute the higher ups. Bridget.
I guess it's human nature because, like, I read these stories online in like Reddit, and they all talk about, oh boy, I got even with this person really good, you know. They
Right.
love to tell that story. So I guess, I mean, I'm surprised that he wanted to get even with them. But he was unforgiving.
Yeah. Wait. So who's the he? Which he? Why, in other words, why would he enact such the hierarchical? Why did Shimon ben Gamliel need to enact the ceremony? Is what you're asking?
No, I'm saying, why did he feel the need to humiliate these two people?
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. So Bridget's question's a good one. Like, well, you could say. So I'll repeat Bridget's question, then I'll offer like a little comeback, and you can guys see which side you want to take. Bridget says, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is being petty. He gets what he wants. He institutes this ceremony. He establishes a clear hierarchy. He gets them kicked out. He brings them back in and just says, like, they can't. But come on, like, why did they need to hold on to this? Okay. That's one position. So let me take the other position just to be devil's advocate, and then you'll tell us then everyone will tell us which one they want. So I say, Bridget, that's not, I disagree. He was being magnanimous. He let them sit outside the Beit Midrash and still participate in the discussions. He listened to their teachings. They tried to humiliate him and oust him and ruin him and ruin the Jewish community for their own whatever, and he allows them to sit on the periphery. He's still engaging in Torah discussions. He even, when they toss back solutions to the questions, he acknowledges the solutions. Then finally, they realize that this whole paper airplane game is kind of stupid, so he brings them back in. There's one consequence, which is, but actions have consequences, and therefore he was actually pretty magnanimous because he could have had their names eradicated from the tradition for eternity, and that he didn't do that, and that you've heard about Rabbi Meir and his stories of Rabbi Meir and some about Rabbi Natan, obviously not that much, but that shows we're only there because of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's ability to forgive. So yes, there was still some, a little bit, but he was very magnanimous. So how many of you agree with Bridget that Shimon ben Gamliel was unforgiving? Okay, we're not going to get a pope this way. Come on, let's see some hands. How many of you think that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was very magnanimous in letting these two folks back into the... Okay, why is no one else voting? They're not like the Pope. They don't have we'll burn all your results. By the way, like the Pope thing, we'll burn all your papers. You will not be quoted. Who wants to say something? Yes. Right. That's right. It's one of the worst things you can do is embarrass somebody. So Rabban Shimon Gamliel is onto it that these two they're supposedly greater Torah scholars than he is, Rabbi Natan and Rabbi Meir, but they were going to embarrass him, which is worse than death. Right, exactly. Or the Michael Scott from The Office when he bought himself a coffee mug that says "World's Best Boss." That he bought it himself. Go ahead.
I feel that he didn't want them to be in a position where they could pull that same stunt on him again.
Yeah, he neuters them. The point is that he made sure they weren't in a position to ever do it again.
If he put them back in their old position, they could do it again.
So then by putting him in and keeping them with some consequence, makes sure that they're under his thumb. But if he had removed all, but then the question is, it's like the Pete Rose gambling thing. Right? The question then is, Rabbi Shimon says to his father, hey, Grandpa and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Natan are long dead. Now can we reinstate their legacy?
I think he could have.
So you're making a nuanced point, saying, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he was magnanimous enough. He wasn't stupid. He wanted to keep the guys under control so they couldn't pull a fast one on him again. And so that was justified. The next generation, Yehuda Nasi, he could have let go, but he didn't. Okay, good. Great. Yeah, you want to use this?
I think the whole story tells to me. Okay. The whole story shows to me the high appreciation the whole Sanhedrin had for the Torah. Because even if something like this happened, like trying to overthrow the Nasi, they still wanted, these were great scholars, and they wanted their contribution. That's why I think Shimon ben Gamliel allowed them to sit outside, because there was a reason why they were in their position.
So their Torah superseded even his embarrassment. Torah is greater than his embarrassment. Good. These are great comments. Okay. So I guess, any other points that people want to make? Bridget, go ahead. Okay, so Bridget and I are like throwing down. That's what the kids say. We're fiercely in argument today, Bridget. Don't try and displace me from my position of honor. You know what my position of honor is? I am the chief breakfast fixer at the Schuldenfrei house. If you want that title, you can have it. Yeah, you'd be very disappointed. It's you know what I make it's everything in a microwave. There's like three things I do. It's either actually I use three different appliances. I either use the toaster oven for toaster oven waffles. Ooh. I use the microwave for what I call pancake cup, which is pancake mix with milk in it in a cup, and then it kind of like bubbles over. But then they told me they didn't like it, so now pancake cup is actually in a bowl. So it's pancake cup in a bowl, but we still call it pancake cup anyway. And then the third thing that I can make for breakfast is we have one of those panini makers, grilled cheese. If you ask for anything outside of those three options, you're out of luck. You can eat any one of those two. So I use three. It's a three appliance feast at the Sheldon Fry house. But if you have like one, you'll come a panini day. Okay, but sometimes they use American cheese. It's a cheap cheese. It's okay. Yeah, okay. So anyway, so Bridget, you and I are having a fight here. Here's what our fight's about. You said Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel started it. And I say, well, sometimes, was he being an egoist or was he recognizing the need for authority? And was he self-promoting or was he just trying to distinguish and set up someone needs to be in charge? Maybe it wasn't clear enough. And maybe he needed like a gesture at the beginning of a ceremony. Gestures are important. Then he needed something to delineate that he was in charge. They stood up for him, but they stood up for the other two guys too. No, initially they stood up for everyone the same. And he institutes the different one, the hierarchy. Initially, they all got up for everyone. And then he kept that and lessened theirs. And so the question is he being a jerk or not? So, okay, so how many of you side with Bridget? Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is being a jerk. Okay, put our hands down. How many of you side with me? The senior rabbi, the chief breakfast maker of 3 appliances, the Sheldon Fry house, that he is not being a jerk, that he's just simply distinguishing his position, and that's wow. I'm getting. How many agree with me? Well, I got like 1.5. Joette is the only one who is invited to my house for breakfast. On Panini Day. Any day can be Panini Day. You just have to, yeah.
Don't use American cheese, it's processed.
I don't even know if we have American cheese. It's not even real cheese. It's like that fake, what's that fake fish? What's the fish that's not a real fish? I forgot the name. It's not like a real fish. It's like a manufactured fish. What is it? Oh, I don't want to eat that. See, everyone sided with you, but I don't eat imitation treif. I'll be alone in my righteousness. Tilapia, that's the one, isn't it? It's a fish? All right, fine. No one's agreeing with anything I say today. My gosh. I think Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel was okay, and I'm going to take the guy out for a tilapia sandwich. Okay.
So I think there's 2 things going on. There's the first 3 guys in the whole story, they're all jerks. But they're all smart.
Yeah.
And there's 2 different buckets here. There's their intelligence, that's one thing.
That's right.
And then there's their jerkiness, which is a separate thing. But the grandson, Shimon the grandson, he is far enough removed that he never saw the jerkiness. He knows about it, but he never saw it. And he wants to hang on to their smart Torah teachings without having to worry about their behavior, which was all crap.
That's really smart. You know what? It reminds me that's the smartest thing. We shall follow. It reminds me of whenever I meet an author of a book that I really loved, I'm always disappointed. Because I like thinking of the book a certain way. I like the work to stand in my mind in a certain way. And then they start and they're like, no, I just don't like it. And I'm disappointed. And then I'm like, and then I see something they do and I don't like it. And I'm like, ugh, and then I feel badly about it. But if I just read, if it just stands on its own, then I really like it. So I try not to go to book talks. Because I just want to like see what I like reading what I read, and I think of it the way I think of it, and the work stands on its own. And your point was a good one, that maybe that's the way Shimon was. He's like, you know, I'm not involved in the whole soap opera. Okay.
My first question is, did their names ultimately come down, or they were totally erased?
They weren't totally erased, but they're Rabbi Meir. There's a lot of agadah about Rabbi Meir, but not much halacha about him. There's a lot of stories about him, but there's not much. He's all over the place with the stories. He should be more involved in the teaching, but he's not.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I am Shimon.
Okay.
I had a...
Wait, are you Shimon?
This one, the grandson.
Oh, you're
I
the
was
grandson.
the granddaughter
Okay.
of a family, in a family feud. And I never met my grandmother, who lived maybe 3 miles away from us. I had no grandparents I ever met. And so whatever the feud is, I was... Their consequence wasn't just within the between them, it affected me.
Right. The bad
And
blood.
Shimon
Yeah.
is affected by not knowing who's being taught. It's gone beyond the petty feud.
Very interesting that when his father Yehuda Nasi quotes the Bible and says something about the enduring badness, and he says, yeah, let's end that. We don't have to. We choose to allow the bad to stay. We don't have to choose to. We don't have to make that decision. But the text ends. Even someone as humble as Yehuda Nasi couldn't. That's the last line we read. Couldn't bring themselves to say anything, to say Rebbe Meir Amar. He was so offended, he couldn't bring himself to say Rebbe Meir Amar. He couldn't bring himself to say that Rebbe Meir said. Wouldn't do it. And if Rebbe Yehuda Nasi couldn't do it, look, we've all been to a point, and it's usually our children who tell us, oh, you're being... where we are like, it's too much. But sometimes it takes time in the next generation. Sometimes that's why a generation needs to clear out so that it can end the inheritance of bad feeling. Okay. So anyway, I don't know what's happening in the Sistine Chapel, but I suspect it's something as juicy as this, and I look forward to studying again next week when I'm sure we'll have a new pope. So that'll be kind of fun. By the way, there's a decent chance, folks, pay attention to this. Oh wait, don't collect them. Let people take it home. I never need the text back. In fact, the highest compliment you can pay is keeping the text and like bringing it home and showing someone else. I'm happy to take it back from you, but I don't need it back. I want to point out that the next pope may be a Hebrew speaker, because one of the contenders for the pope is a pope who lives in is a cardinal of Jerusalem, and I don't know if he's Israeli, but he's lived in Israel for like 20 years. And so he speaks fluent Hebrew, and he may be the next pope. So that is interesting. A few conclaves ago, I forget if it was with the last pope or Benedict before him, but there was a pope from France who was in contention. I'm not sure if this pope is still alive or if he's aged out, but he was a pope who actually halachically was Jewish. So we could have had a Jewish pope. He wouldn't have been the first. Yeah, but anyway, that's why they didn't pick him. It was anti-Semitism. No, I don't think so. But anyway, have a great day, everybody.
Feel better, Rabbi.
I wonder, I need an attorney. My next door neighbor was breeding coyotes in their backyard, and the city came and cleaned out their entire backyard, and I have a bit of an overlap with that. And
send me an email and I can you send me an email about it? You know, that'd be great. Call me and leave me a message, and that way I'll look for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
She does. All right, everyone. Off I go. Have a great day.
You are not the same way that Shimon ben Gamliel, because when you introduce yourself at services, you don't say I'm the CEO, you say I'm one of the CEO, and I think that's lovely.
Oh, thank you. Can I tell you, someone criticized me for that.
Criticize you, why?
They said you're the senior rabbi. You should identify yourself as that.
What difference does that make to all the people sitting there who
I
see you one time and then leave?
I don't care. Right.
No, it reminds me when, again, when Mark was promoted to colonel, we were living in a house on an Air Force base, which was designated a lieutenant colonel house. And when he got promoted to colonel, another colonel's wife from a different part of the Air Force said, you should request the new house, because that house over there is for colonels, whereas you're only in a lieutenant colonel's house. We said, no thanks. We
We're
don't
okay. We move our boxes. Sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Okay, Joette, we're gonna play.